أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين ونشهد أن سيدنا مولانا محمدا عبده ورسوله. In the name of Allah, the gracious, the merciful, all praise is due to Allah, the Lord of the universe, the Master of the Day of Judgment. I bear witness and testimony to the oneness of Allah, to His magnificence, His omnipotence, His might, His glory, to His being the creator and sustainer of all things, the giver of life, the guider of hearts, the master of the Day of Judgment. And I bear witness to the fact that Muhammad ibn Abdullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is His servant and final messenger. May the peace and blessings of Allah be upon him and upon all those who choose to tread in his path until the last day. For the last few weeks, we've been looking at verses from Surah Al-Furqan that speak about a particular category of servant of Allah, the Ibad Rahman. May Allah make us from amongst them. And these verses in Surah Al-Furqan, this is the 25th chapter of the Quran, they give us a lot of insight and detail aspirationally. Individuals who walk with humility and grace upon the earth. The verses start out, وَعِبَادُ الرَّحْمَنِ الَّذِينَ يَمْشُونَ عَلَى الْأَرْضِ هَوْنًا. And when they speak to those who are ignorant, the jahilun, they respond with peace, قَالُوا سَلَامًا. It talks about the Ibad Rahman having characteristics of spending a portion of the night in prostration and in standing, being those who call upon Allah to protect them from Jahannam. Those who they live in a moderate way, not with excess and extravagance or miserliness. And so many other qualities that we've discussed thus far, and we're going to continue on of two more verses to look at. But prior to, we want to be able to think about why would Allah give us this in the first place? And as a construct, to recognize that the idea is to implement and execute upon what it is that we get exposed to. That the reading isn't done just for the sake of the reading, but it needs to be transformational. And in order for it to achieve that, you got to recognize first and foremost that each of these verses that we've looked at over the last month and a half, 2 months, are things that you have the ability to accomplish. That if at the onset, the idea is that this is somebody else that will live these verses. It's not me. Somebody else is going to be the one who removes foolish arrogance. Somebody else is going to be the one who engages or disengages from just quarrels and foolish conversation. Somebody else is going to be the one that leaves behind that which is futile. Somebody else will be the one that is in a space where they say, this verse, it's for me. Sometimes there's certain things that are difficult to do in the course of religious practice, and I want to make it easy for us. We all have struggles. But to have an inward struggle that automatically assumes that I somehow am not one that can be transformed through this text or these verses, then you've already given Shaitan victory over you. You want to go in with a mindset that with strategy I can seek to implement, that with reflection and contemplation I can think about what it is that I really want to be and how it is that I get to that point. The verses are given for us to act upon. And the idea that they're given for us to act upon is rooted in the notion that you have the capacity to actually achieve it. You have the capacity to actually do it. You got to just overcome whatever it is that exists within that has you believe otherwise. And when you can sit and see yourself not in a place where comparison is now done to those around you. Because introspection and reflection in our tradition is not rooted in what societally we quite often see perspectives of self rooted in. Our spiritual tradition is not about the adoption of a superiority complex that gives us a delusion sense of self rooted in comparisons to others that gives us a false sense of grandeur. It's not about an inferiority complex that renders a delusional sense of self that is rooted in a false sense of insignificance. But we are meant to be those who adopt an introspection that is inward. Interiority becomes the basis of our contemplation. You're not compared to anybody else. You're just taking a look within, and you're willing to challenge yourself to say the I that is me today is not afraid to meet the I that I can be tomorrow. It becomes hard, but that inward voice is the first place to start that conversation. You allow for yourself to go home and say that it's okay for me to be somebody who not just reads this book, but takes from it, gains understanding from it, makes decisions based upon it. And if you start to be in a place where you tell yourself that somehow you're outside of the fold of being able to engage it, it's not going to come with ease. It's not going to come with a sense of empowerment. And everything is going to just feel like a struggle. Why wouldn't it feel like it's a burden? And so go with a mindset and read the verses and seek to then think within yourself, how do I start to actualize them? The next characteristic that these verses in Surah Al-Quran speak about, it says, وَالَّذِينَ إِذَا ذُكِّرُوا بِآيَاتِ رَبِّهِمْ, that they are those who, when they are reminded of the signs of their Lord, their Rabb, that they don't fall. لَمْ يَخِرُّوا. They don't fall upon them, عَلَيْهَا صُمٌّ وَعُمْيَانًا, deaf and blind. The initial part of this is something that's important to understand before we get to the latter parts of the verse. Because all of the verses that spoke before talked about a lot of different things, inward and outward, ritual, practice, engagement, etiquette, interaction. The Ibad al-Rahman, they walk with gentleness. They respond to the ignorant with peace. They are those who spend the night in prostration and in standing, making sajda and qiyam. They are those who make dua to Allah, and in that dua, they acknowledge the torments of Jahannam and seek protection from it. They are those who, when they spend, they don't spend superfluously or with excess or with miserliness, but they're in a middle way. They don't associate partners with the divine. They don't commit qaba'ir, major sins like zina and murder. They are those who, when they walk past that which is futile, that which is vain and idle, they do so with nobility and dignity. This verse is saying that these are people who also, where they embody all of these things, they're still willing to take advice from others. They're still open to reminders. They're not in a place where they say that I have achieved this, I have made this happen, I know that I do this thing. But that sense of false pride that is not beneficial, that elevation of the ego, the nafs, becomes deflated. And yes, there are those who pray in the late hours of the night, they give up their wealth, they make dua, they engage with just gentleness and kindness, and they have characteristic after characteristic of things that are positive. May Allah make us from amongst them. They're still willing to take feedback. They're still willing to take advice. they're still willing to be in a place that says, hey, there's things that I can be reminded of. Can we have everybody just move up, please? You come in close. The challenge is for us to go through the latter part of this necessitate being able to engage in this part. Is you think for yourself individually, who is it that you have in your life that if they were to give you feedback of some kind, give you actual criticism, give you advice and insight, whether you are sitting in this room and you are young and more young than most of us, or you are the eldest of the elderly in this room, none of us is in a place that our last actions have been taken because we're still breathing breaths in this dunya. And there's not one of us that doesn't have room to still have opportunity for growth. But if everything comes now with a sense of defensiveness, if there's an allergy to be able to take insight, you don't want to just categorize it as being right or wrong or good or bad, but be able to fundamentally think within myself, why is it hard for me to take from somebody else when they're giving to me? Pretty much every book of hadith has a chapter in it that is just about softening the hearts. Riqaq. And you have hadith where the Prophet ﷺ, he says, Inna lillahi ta'ala aniyatan min ahli al-ard, that indeed for Allah Azza wa Jal, amongst the people of the earth, they're vessels for Allah. وَآنِيَةُ رَبِّكُمْ, and the vessels of your Lord, قُلُوبِ عِبَادِ الصَّالِحِينَ, are the hearts of his righteous servants. أَحَبُّهَا أَلْيَنُهَا وَأَرَقُهَا, that the ones he loves the most are the ones that are most soft and most tender. May Allah give us hearts that are like this. When a heart is lean, it's not light in the sense that the lights illuminate the room, but it's light in the sense that it's willing to take counsel. It's willing to take advice. When it has softness to it, it's in a place where it actually renders strength. This is a paradox in our spirituality, that a strong heart is a soft heart. A hard heart is a weak heart. May Allah grant us hearts that are soft. The willingness to engage now recognizes that in our tradition, you can't have spiritual increase if there's nothing to improve upon. And the challenge that comes in quite often stems from not just an unwillingness, but also an absence of individuals that we surround ourselves by. And so it's not, why don't I take from every person that comes my way? But why aren't you surrounding yourself with people that you are close enough to that you're willing to take advice from them? The depth of your relationships that exist in the spaces that you frequent most often. Are those going to be spaces that afford for you an opportunity to interact with somebody in the first place? And this verse in and of itself is saying that they're giving reminders of the ayat of their Lord. You can't get reminders of Allah's ayats if you're not in a place or a space or with people who can give you those reminders in the first place. And the idea of coming to Jummah once a week, that's not something to undermine. May Allah increase us in our commitments to these rituals, not as an end, but a means of something. But you got to also bring yourself to places where you purposely and deliberately break out of a mode that becomes lazy inwardly. The nafs doesn't want you to be generous. It doesn't want you to move. It doesn't want you to go to things that are good for you. But you got to get up off of your seat and go to places purposefully where you can now sit and have opportunity to reflect on what it is that is given for your benefit. Go to the halaqat, go to the gatherings, make time for your heart. And if 40 minutes in a week is what you give your heart importance towards, And the other 7 days are things that you are bombarded by spaces where nobody cares enough about you to give you advice, where they're not even asking you how you are doing, inquiring about your sick relatives, seeing if you need anything whatsoever. And you're not going to be in a place where that opportunity to have feedback and cultivate a growth mindset is afforded. As the verse continues, it says that when they are given these reminders, right? When you have the word dhukiru, it's in the passive grammatically in Arabic, and it's followed by ba. Like we say, Bismillah, there's a ba in the beginning. What that ba is denoting in conjunction with this word is that you're being presented something. And these are people who the negation of the act is the description of the Ibadur Rahman. That when they are given reminders of the ayat of their Lord, that they don't turn away from them, deaf and blind. These are not physical attributes of how we experience hearing and sight, but a spiritual hearing and a spiritual seeing. And it's imperative to understand, because the way of the believer is not that they just go with the flow and follow what everyone else is doing. When you read the verses of this surah in books of tafsir, they cite a narration of Ibn Aoun, where he speaks to a sheikh by the name of Shabi. And he says that I asked him that if an individual was to come into a place and he saw everybody in prostration in that space, should he join them in that prostration? Not knowing what it is that they're even doing. And the sheikh says, no, you don't. You got to first find out what's the point of their prostration in the first place. You're not simply doing it because somebody else does it, but you do it because you know why you're doing what you're doing. That the deaf and blindness is such that the verse is given and it doesn't just go in one ear and out the other, but there's an opportunity for reflection, contemplation, a recognition of what I'm bringing of my inward self to this. And I'm in a place where I don't become indifferent. I'm not in a place where I'm unmoved, but I allow for stillness. I'm not distracted by the workplace I got to go back to, the relationship that's not working out, the parents that yell at me all the time, the children that don't respect me anymore, the fact that I don't really have so many people that invite me to things. All of these things are hard. I'm not saying they're bad, but if something is agitating your inward and it is grasping and taking control of your ability to focus, you got to deal with it and take it on. Seek out the resources for healing so that it doesn't then take away opportunity to be able to enhance in your spiritual increase that gives now a road to real contentment. How many people do you know that when they hear things that are not just ayat of Quran, see things that are not just ayat of Quran? You can go read Surah Al-Rum, and there's an amazing section that just says verse after verse, وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ, speaking of the signs of the divine. How many people do you know that they walk down the street and literal beauty is ascending and descending in the horizons twice a day? The sun sets and the sun rises. Nobody's even looking at it. Oblivious to what's going on. Individuals who are so confined and stuck in the dunya that they pass on opportunities of real beauty. One of the reasons it's hard for us to take advice, if you study this from basic standpoints of just human development, is that most of us as children weren't really treated so well. And when you couple the two and you understand what it is that renders a spiritual deafness and blindness, the pursuit of what it was that had people not spend time with their young people, validating that I got to be stuck someplace else, or I got to do something that isn't sitting here, watching this kid achieve in minimal ways. It all creates then a self-perpetuating cycle. You don't want to be the person who, when you hear it, you say it's not a big deal. It is a big deal. You want to also aspire to be the person that recognizes that individually you have been given intellect. We are in a part of the calendar year right now that demonstrates all of this versus full actuality. Where in these days and nights of Muharram, centuries ago, we find the tragedy of Kutbah. The family members of the Messenger of God, sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam, his beautiful grandson, Imam Hussein alayhi salam, who centuries later, throughout the world, Sunni, Shi'i, people of all backgrounds who are Muslim, all agree that what transpired there is an atrocity. These were individuals who dared to harm the messenger of God's grandchildren. To be in a space where you start to recognize what is the epitome that humans can actually achieve of deafness and blindness to Allah's book. They claim to be Muslim. They literally are in a space where they know and understand firsthand, not like you and I have read books of narrations and traditions of how our prophet would be on the minbar and he would see his grandchildren come and he would descend to take them. How he would play games with them, pretending to be a camel as they rode his back, kissing them, telling them how he loved them. Individuals who are in such a place of just muteness of their spiritual senses that on this plane of Karbala, they see right in front of them the grandson of the messenger of God, and they still advance based off of their base desires. What more of a sign of your Lord do you need than one of the two young men who are called the Sayyids of the Shabab of Jummah standing right in front of you, and you still are in a place where your heart is shut down? What's remarkable is the light of Hussein still moves forward. Those who are actually from the Ibad al-Rahman, you can't shut down the beauty that they espouse. If you're Sunni in this gathering and you don't know what took place at Karbala, and part of the reason why you don't know is because in your head, you believe that that's something that only those in the Shia community are supposed to know, you are more than wrong. If you deprive yourself of access to the beauty, the pearls of wisdom, the lessons that come from the Ahlul Bayt, not even fully conscious and aware of geopolitical realities that influence how you have learned your religion, which again, this verse is telling you, wake up. Don't run around as if you are simply a body without a mind and a heart. But ask yourself why you are in pursuit of the things you are in pursuit of. Stop running on default settings that are just about food and drink, the engagement of physical intimacy. You don't want to be the evidence of the verse, "Ulaika kal an'am," that they are just like cattle. May Allah protect us from it. But you got a big, beautiful heart beating inside of you, man. And the Ibad al-Rahman, that's the vehicle through which they see the world, they hear the world, they experience the world. They take time to cultivate the inward state so that when they read the book, it's a book that then is transformative, not a book you're scared of, not a book you take out only at weddings or funerals, not one that just sits on a shelf and somebody else is supposed to tell you what it says. But at this point in time, it's a book that I have the audacity, rooted in a love of my God that I believe in, believes in me more than I even can fathom. Doesn't just watch me, but watches over me, loves me more than a mother loves its child. So you got to start reading it, taking from its verses, and then be open to what its message is telling you. To allow for yourself to be from amongst those who are not in a place where it's for anyone else's benefit, but just your own, that you start to experience what it is to actually engage and live that text. And that's what it's about. There's reasons why we have hadith that tell us that the Prophet ﷺ is the personification of the Quran. He's living the book. I just want you to think, not with self-deprecation. It has to be real reflection, not with rumination. It has to be real contemplation. How often do you engage the Quran that was given to you? And if in your head all the excuses pop up, I don't know how to read Arabic, I don't really recite it well, I'm busy, I'm this, I'm that, all you're saying is it's not important. And then everything that it offers definitively, you're also by extension saying it's not important. I'm going to tell you it is very important because you're very important. And we don't need Muslims who read the Quran and live the Quran because it's our job to go show the world how great Islam is. Islam is great whether people understand that. You're not doing it as a PR stunt. You're not doing it as a station in the park at a dawah table. You want to do it because there's benefit in it for you. You want to be the people who they walk around on this earth and you know every single day you read about people who clearly are just in a space where you say, how can you see the world in this way? How are you okay with it? How are you okay making the decisions about how people will continue to be killed by gunfire? The policies that you do in policing, the way women are restricted in making choices on their bodies. The legislation that you enact that puts people in a place where they are separated from their families for years and years and years. You see these examples, what the verse is saying when the ayats are in front of you, don't be deaf and blind to them. Reflect upon them, contemplate, what kind of person do I want to be at the end of the day? Our tradition posits a primordial state that's called the fitrah. It assumes that all of us have an innate sense of balance. What you can draw from the story of Karbala is an immense opportunity to understand what this means. Because it's not just about I live with beauty, I act with beauty, but also those who have a real connection to a fitri state, they themselves are attracted to real beauty, not to real ugliness. When they see beauty, they see truth. They see what is really good, not ambiguously, subjectively, but what is without doubt good, then they are drawn towards it. Versus those who are not in that state, that fitri state, they're drawn towards things of darkness, things of ugliness. You take a pause and you start to listen to your own heart. What state is it in right now? Do you know? When was the last time you looked at it? And all of the other things that claim to offer you happiness, but really they're just giving you a sense of dissatisfaction with what you have. Is it really worth chasing after at the end of it? In this verse, the Ibad Rahman, they're being described as those that when they're given these reminders, they're presented with it. They don't engage them with a sense of just turning away, deafness, blindness, but they're open to it. They want to take advice. They want to improve. They want to grow. Inshallah ta'ala, may our Creator make us from amongst them. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله تعالى فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن سيدنا مولانا محمدا عبده ورسوله. We just have everybody move up again one more time. Speak the word triple again. Come close. For about a week now, we've been hosting here at our center a series of programs. It's for the Shia tradition of Islam. The Muharram is a nightly majlis that's taking place here. Whether you're Sunni or Shia, you should try to attend. Sheikh Faz Jafar has been giving lectures on various topics. They're also recounting the tragic narrative of Karbala. If you've never heard it or read it before, it's a good opportunity to learn. On the 10th of Muharram, which will be this coming Monday, there'll be a program in the morning as well for those who've been coming in the nights. You need to come to it if you're a student and you need an accommodation for classes. If you're at work and they're not letting you leave work, we've also written notes for people to get out of work. I don't know how that works, but work. Let us know. You don't have to be in a place where you forego your own religious obligations in order to fulfill something that is definitely not as important as where you want to be there. Also on Monday night, we're going to be hosting Iftar here. We'll have a halaqah at 7, followed by Maghrib and Iftar. In the Sunni tradition, the day of Ashura, the 10th of Muharram, is the day that we're recommended to fast. The Prophet ﷺ would fast this day, even when he was in Mecca, the hadith indicates. And then we came to Medina and found people of the book fasting that day. And when we inquired as to why they were fasting, they said in commemoration of the exodus of the children of Israel, the Musa's people were free from tyranny on that day. So the Prophet ﷺ says, we have more right to Moses than you, that we will also fast. He said if there was more time to his life in the following year, he would have fasted the day prior to it as well. You want to take advantage of these opportunities. Be in places where you push yourself. You go to gatherings that our tradition teaches us that the angels are a part of, to allow for your heart to reach its fullest potential, to be awakened then to sights that might not be seen with what is most apparent, but what this verse in Surah Al-Furqan that we're talking about is giving us an indication of is that the Ibad Rahman, they're not just living based off of what is seen, but they're living also based on what is unseen. They're able to take verses and actually reflect on them, contemplate, find meaning in things. And not in a way that is just common parlance where individuals throw hot button words out as if the statements have substance, but at the end we try to adopt and says, what does any of this really mean? You have every answer to ethical dilemmas, prescriptions, remedies, strategies for spiritual increase and inward healing found within our Quran and our tradition. You want to get to a place where you start to implement upon it at this juncture in your life without fear or trepidation, but with a sense of there's benefit in this for me. So be a part of these gatherings and allow for yourself to benefit from them. Even if you've gone multiple times, each time the experience should be different because you should be in a state of change, a state of flux, and how you experience them should be different. In the coming weeks, we're going to also start to bring candidates for some new positions here at our center to engage the community. We share this with you because we want you to make yourself available to help us decide who we're hiring in certain roles. So individuals will come, they will join us for meals, they'll give some talks and halakas and discussions with members of our community. Some might come and give the Jummah Kutbah. We're letting you know now because we want to have your feedback on that so that who we bring in to be in service of the community, we have community buy-in and we get your insight on where and how we should proceed on those things. Please make dua that Allah blesses us with those who are in service of this community, who are here with sound intention, with strong dedication, and are willing to do what it is that we need from them in the best of ways, but also those that we are willing to support in the ways that they deserve. That there's reciprocity to that relationship. And I'm confident that whoever we bring in, I know that you all are going to continue to be mindful, respectful, but also caring of them, the way that so many of us who work here, volunteer, professionally or otherwise, have been able to benefit from them. So please do come to these events. If you're in a fast on Monday, inshallah, join us for iftar here in this room. If you can avail yourself of the opportunity to go to the Majalis programs led by Sheikh Fiaz Jafar, do so as well. Inshallah ta'ala, there'll be benefit in it for all of us.